It's so quiet. Okay, it is 4 o'clock. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, August 15th. Today was a very special day. I got to relax a little bit and turn over the reins to the mayors for a day. They got to run the city today. So we had a fun afternoon. And I've asked them to lead us in the pledge. I know we don't normally do the pledge at the work session, but we can't do the pledge too many times. So we're going to do it tonight, and we'll rise and have them lead us with the pledge. Come on forward, guys.
The flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to thank Amber for helping to organize this day. These are the recipients of, I donated a couple of silent auction items to for mayor for a day, so for a couple different functions. And so today we got to spend an afternoon together learning about what the city does and all the different functions of the city, touring the library. We did a ribbon cutting. We even got some ice cream. And so now I'm going to present them with their certificates. And this says their name on it. It says the certificate of recognition is presented for service as honorary mayor for a day in the city of Marion, Iowa on August 15th, 2023. So I'll have Elizabeth come up first. And Owen Foss. And Amelia Foss. And Ali Urbina. All right. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you. Okay. On with our agenda for today. First, we have a presentation from Leanne on it's a budget discussion on preliminary annual report and the capital improvement program. Welcome.
Thank you. This is the third in a series of budget discussions. At the last council meeting, we discussed the 5-year financial plan cash flow model, which will assist Team Marion understand the impacts of budgeting decisions. Today, we will go over the preliminary financial report to better understand what has changed specifically in the fund balances since we assembled the fiscal year 24 budget. But before we do that, Council Member Jensen was kind enough to point out an error in a formula. So I would like to bring back that one slide for the benefit of the public and point out the fact that that 3% growth taxable value should be 1.972 million, which results in a change of tax of 466,130. And the point that I was trying to make in the slide is still the same in that as you go from 3% growth to 5% growth, that amount of tax decreases from 466 to 456. And then as you go to 6% growth down to 452. So that trend that I was trying to point out is still the same. So moving on, this picture is hopefully starting to look familiar to you all. The numbers for fiscal year 2023 are not yet finalized. We have requested departments submit their request for carryover items that were intended to purchase during fiscal year 23, but didn't quite get purchased, that they plan to carry over to 2024. So kind of don't be fooled by the numbers. They're not final. And that's kind of the whole, don't be fooled by Ursula in The Little Mermaid if you're trying to tie to the picture. So as we look at the general fund, at the time we assembled the fiscal year 24 budget, we asked departments to estimate where they would end the fiscal year 23 budget year. Those estimates were then used to determine where we expected the ending fund balance for fiscal year 23. So on the screen, you can see the estimated fiscal year 23 estimated column and that fiscal year 23 actual column, with the far right column being actual less estimated. This is positive news because we ended the year with net revenues and $690,000 more than anticipated in fund balance. Now I'm going to go into the detail on what was making up some of those numbers. So these are revenue variances greater than 20,000. I'm going to speak to some of them. You can certainly read the slide. As far as interest goes, rates increased from around 3% at the time of the fiscal year 24 budget to 5% by the end of June. Property taxes is primarily due to the timing of when property tax owners make payment. Franchise fees, we do not yet have a good trend history on, and as you know, Iowa weather tends to fluctuate. The local contribution line at the top with water noted, that's actually just a change in accounting practices because they are a component unit. Rather than booking a revenue, we use a flow-through account. And then the transfer in civil rights grant catch-up was something previously discussed with City Council. As we look to the expense variances by organization, just a huge shout out to our team. Last year, we used 100,000 as our cutoff. Here it's 50,000. So these are variances greater than 50,000. And as you can see, parks, police, fire are all within 3%, also library. The big ones out here are legal, which is due to ongoing litigation costs. Finance is kind of a misnomer because of the fact that the unbudgeted transfer out for employee benefits makes it look like it was over budget when in actuality it was under budget for the year. Library is primarily due to personnel costs and library materials as we opened the new library. Planning department is due to the community development director vacancy, and the HR is due to the HR director vacancy. And if we wanted to switch gears and look at what accounts, we dropped this amount from 50,000 to 35,000 to capture what's making up those differences. Big ones here, benefits payout. We've actually started booking those directly in the general fund where we used to use a different fund. Some of that again is accounting cleanup, but you can see the overall trend here is some of the same. Legal costs, and then insurance claims is another one of those that we actually budget 50,000 for claims. So while we were under in claims, we were over in premium. Just an important trend for you to realize. And then the rest are those travel, training, full-time salaries due to vacancies. Any questions on these?
No questions? Go ahead.
Leanne, on the prior slide, you had commented that, or actually, it's maybe back one more. Franchise fees. We don't have a good trend on that. What, how long that's electric, gas, and cable?
Yes.
Oh, and so I'm just curious, how long have those been in place? And I think if that's a fuzzy number, why is it fuzzy?
Why is it a fuzzy number?
Yeah.
So we had the MediaCom, the cable franchise fee we've had for a number of years. The electric gas franchise fee, we just implemented during COVID times when people were working from home and being a highly residential
Okay. So we just
community.
don't have the longevity.
And then just the fluctuations in weather. You want a few seasons of that weather before you can determine the trend.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I
Yep.
should have deduced that.
Rainey.
Leanne, I had one quick question, and that is on the next slide. I'm sorry. 2080 agreements. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly. Is that revenues out or revenues in on the 28E being down?
This is expense variances. So A positive number means we were over budget in expenditures. A negative number means we were under budget. So we were under budget on 28E contracts in the amount of 38,942.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So again, just that overall general fund summary, we did see an increase in our fund balance and ended the year at 12.67 million. Contingent on any changes we see during our audit season. Then moving on to the road use tax fund. We also saw an increase in ending fund balance of 2.4, almost 2.5 million. You can see that that is largely due to the expense and transfers outside. So diving into that detail, I've got just one slide for road use tax. We did see 378,000 over in road use tax revenue over what was budgeted. And just a reminder, we do use the state's per capita number when we're putting together those estimates. So we're outperforming the state's estimate. The transfer out to capital projects, of course, is for the public service facility project. And these are all under budget items. Full-time salaries is not surprising. If you recall, we did a deep dive in the spring when we proceeded with the facility financing, and we've been looking at a number of positions. For instance, we left the street supervisor position vacant, the HR director position was vacant, and the part-time positions that we had budgeted for were not filled. Any questions on road use tax?
None.
Moving on to sanitary sewer. Same trend. We saw an increase in fund balance of 865,000. Really is nice to be bringing positive news. The expense is what's going to make up the big difference here. So you can see 28E contracts, we were actually over budget. This is because we actually paid 13 months worth of O&M, operating and maintenance costs. We kind of had a catch-up payment. We had been paying 1 month in arrears for a while. But overall, you're looking at, again, project costs and then the full-time salaries and health insurance. And the thing with health insurance is anytime we have a vacancy, if we're budgeting to a vacancy, we always assume a family policy. When they come on, they may choose single. Any questions on sanitary sewer? On the solid waste side, our ending fund balance increased by $1.1 million, again, primarily due to the expense side. Some of the trends identified in a post-derecho recovery, we are starting to see those garbage tag revenues moderate. So we were under budget on our garbage tag revenue, over budget for interest revenue and for collections. Contracts 28E, we are seeing garbage volumes also decrease with derecho recovery. So that's our payments to CRLC, Solid Waste Agency. And then again, project costs is due to the public service facility where we were using road use tax dollars first, and those are in capital funds. No questions on solid waste. I'll move on to urban forest. Urban forest increased by 127,000. On the revenue side, we did receive the salvage harvest dollars. Aside from that, the project costs for the right-of-way landscaping that project did not occur last fiscal year. So those are the big ones for that one. Any questions on urban forest? Stormwater management, we increased by 216,000. This one, again, is in the project cost arena, and this one I believe is simply just due to timing of when the project occurs. If it occurs early in the summer or late in the summer, it depends on where it will land for the fiscal year. There are no questions on that one. The overall capital improvement program, again, just a kudos to our team. Our actual minus budget last fiscal year was 16.35 million. So this year we were at 7.2 million. We are getting better and more realistic. Obviously, there's always still that timing of our fiscal year ending in the middle of the summer, which is the middle of Iowa's construction season. But there it is broke out by project type, with facilities being 9.9 million approximately, and transportation being around 6.6 million. Here are those project variances greater than 750,000. Last year, we used $1 million for our threshold when displaying this slide. Public service facility being a project that actually moved ahead quicker than we anticipated. The rest, I believe, a lot of them are actually already under contract. Again, it's just due to the timing of when the construction actually occurs. Any questions about those? And then we do have a slide that does show some completed projects. These do exclude the annual program. So kudos to and shout out to engineering, because we did a lot of construction this past year. There are 8 annual programs that are not included in this slide that were completed. Any questions?
None?
Thank you.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank
Can I-
you.
Go ahead.
Can I just add, I think the important part to remember is that these are positive numbers. This is a good thing for us. Kudos to Leanne, because we're starting to see a lot of the results of the revised budgeting process and the methodology that she's instilled in our organization. Kudos to the staff to buying into that philosophy. There's more to come. When we look at things like the general fund, please keep in mind, as she said, things aren't always what they seem. And remember, we added 6 firefighters for this fiscal year. That was something that we needed to do. So there are some strategic moves that we have done and we will continue to do, especially with our utility funds and trying to get the fund balances up to certain levels to meet our covenants with some of our bond obligations. So there's a lot of things that factor into that. So I don't want the general public to hear, well, oh, we're sitting on this fund balance. That's not the case. It's important to have the fund balance. In some of these areas, we were artificially low. So we have to build some of these up so that we can meet certain requirements and that we have certain needs in the community that we have been working to address, like public safety, specifically with our fire department. So those are things that are important to articulate as we're sharing this positive news, because it does set us up, especially as we're entering into this next budget cycle.
Thank you for that perspective. Any other questions on this before we move on? Okay, thanks, Leanne. Thanks to everyone. Amber is next with a discussion and direction regarding the National Community Survey.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As you know, we are on track to conduct our next National Community Survey. We do this every other year, and we have worked with NCS and Polco since 2017. This is a random sample survey. The invitation will go to 3,000 households this year with the survey and actual postcard invitations. Respondents will have an opportunity to complete the survey online or via the paper copy, and then it will open to all residents for a couple of weeks towards the end of the survey window. Our plan is to administer it after Labor Day and have it open for about 6 weeks, so into mid-October. When completed, we get a full report of the results and an interactive dashboard. And one of the major benefits of this tool is that our results are benchmarked against other cities that use the same tool. And then we also request specialized benchmarking for cities of a similar size, median income, and proximity to a metro area. We've kind of kept this consistent since we started this process back in 2017. So to achieve consistency and a fair comparison with the other cities, we don't want to mess with the questions, a lot of the standardized questions. A lot of those we want to keep consistent so that we can see that trend data for our own purposes, and then also that benchmarking data that we collect. However, we do have the option to add 2 to 4 custom questions, specific to Marion. In the past, we have asked 2, questions pretty consistently. One asking where people get their information. Do they find it on the city website, local media outlets, our Marion Messenger publication? There's 6 or 7 options listed there. And the other asked to what extent residents would support or oppose a property tax increase or fee increase for certain improvements. And then 10 to 12 items are listed there, ranging from schools to parks to public transportation and so on. My recommendation would be to carry those 2 questions forward, but I do want to see if there are other topics that council is interested in adding this year with the 2023 version of the survey.
Anyone have thoughts on that? Is the staff inclined to just keep those same 2 questions, or are there others that, from the staff's perspective, that?
I've put the same request out to the leadership team. I know in the past conversations, brick streets have come up. If there's a question we would want to pose. Ambulance service has been mentioned, maybe impacts related to legislative actions at the state level. Of a variety, but once I gather all the ideas, I'll take it to our project manager and kind of work through what makes sense in terms of how the questions are worded and formatted and that type of thing, but certainly want to get council's input.
And how long is the window open to give input? I mean, this is just here today, or is there a few days, or?
You know, we could, a week from now,
Okay.
would like to kind of circle back with them, but certainly want to give you an opportunity to think about it.
Sure. Steve, do you have something?
Two things jump into my mind. I'm not sure if they fit into the survey or not. Obviously, maybe we could get some input about fireworks. I know we talk about that. It'll be on the agenda in April. But we've never, I don't recall that we've ever
I don't think we have.
received input from the community as a whole.
Mhm.
And another one, I'm not sure if this, how you'd fit this in. I mean, obviously, we're getting over the last year, this last year especially, lots of questions, comments about parking. We're doing a parking study. Again, I'm just off the top of my head, I don't know if there's anything we can really target in that specific area, since our parking studies focusing on the uptown area, not citywide. So that may be too narrow
Mhm.
of a thing. I mean, everybody will agree we need more parking. I think, I don't know if they're willing to.
Although there's a separate survey for parking that's been out.
With several of the studies that are underway, there will be separate outreach or
Okay.
digital
That'll have a-
opportunities.
Okay, very good.
It's
then.
out now. I mean, there's a survey.
Oh, there
people
is on the
taking.
parking?
Mhm.
Oh, I did not know that.
Right?
I think
They
it's
haven't
in
started the
development.
study yet, have they?
Oh, no, that's the garbage one.
Yeah,
Sorry.
garbage.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay,
But
thank
then
We
you.
have several.
I
There'll
did-
be community outreach with the parking study.
then
that
let-
will- Yeah.
Let's
that's right,
let that carry it on its own then.
Yeah.
That's right. I
Sorry.
forgot that was
yeah. I
gonna,
mean, to confuse things.
if that's got an outreach, then that'll take care of that for me. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Amber, you said this online, this survey would be available for 6 weeks?
The paper survey and those who receive the special invitation to respond, kind of our random sample, will have 6 weeks to respond. It will open to all residents, the last 2 weeks, and both are kept separate just for reporting purposes. But what we found in years past is the data does kind of align and we see the same trends, but that information is kept separate, but we receive both reports.
Okay.
The online version would be available for 2 weeks at the end.
One more follow-up. So the 3,000 households you send the survey to, do you recall what is the response rate that we get that complete the survey?
Gosh, I don't have that offhand. I would be happy to circle back, just looking back at our 2021 results.
Yeah,
Um,
I know.
I believe 30% comes to mind, but
I know when you always cover that. We want to make sure, obviously, that the
Yeah.
number of surveys is appropriate to give us a good response rate. So
this
that we
is
can
nearly
react to it.
double. The sample size has increased from previous.
Oh, has it?
Um,
Okay.
Yep, it's
Oh.
nearly double what it used to be.
All right, very good.
So, yeah, so one of the things, and I think we talked about this, the last go around on this is I kind of take a look at what is a statistically accurate sample size for our community? And, now if we take the community size at what, 42,000 in round numbers, I mean, that's everybody. But that suggests a sample size of 381 to be statistic, which it is. So I guess the only question is that, we know when we hit whatever that right value is, that, everything else over and above that is icing on the cake.
Right.
But I think do we get periodic reports as as the surveys are
Yes.
completed?
Yes.
Okay,
we can
all right.
watch.
I think that'd just be interesting to know when we hit that threshold with whatever the guidance that our survey experts would give us on that.
Sure. Yep.
Go ahead.
Amber, I'm sorry if I missed this. Is there an open-ended option anywhere in here where it's just kind of a general, what's your one question for the city of Marion, or what's that thing almost it doesn't fit in the buckets. It's not really for our own trends. It's more of kind of an information piece for gathering. I don't know what that open-ended question is, but I didn't know if is that a part of this?
I don't believe so. I would be happy to go back to them and ask. I do feel like we have other tools that we could use to pose questions of that sort, but this is very much,
And
stick to the
years of that.
That's council office hours.
Maybe that's the question. Did you know we do council office hours? Because there's some people who may not even know we do that. For everything. Okay.
Any other questions for Amber? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll send a follow-up email, and then if feedback by next week would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, next is the agenda review for Thursday. The first item that's marked for discussion is on page 5, A10. Are there any items prior to that item? With questions? Carol, A10?
Your Honor, this is an addendum to the master services agreement that we entered into with IMON back in January.
Is it on?
This is an addendum to the master services agreement that we entered into with IMON back in January for free public Wi-Fi. So with this addendum, what we're looking at doing is, is adding on to coverage out at the Ball Diamonds at Lau Park, and then out at the A&E building space between the A&E building and the amphitheater. The red ovals that you're seeing there are the general coverage areas for the Wi-Fi that we're adding. And if approved, we're looking at a timeline of late September to mid-October to get the equipment installed.
Questions? Go ahead.
So Terrell, there's 2 sets of diamonds out there. So when you say ball diamonds, is it both sets of 4 fields?
Yes.
Okay.
So the coverage is within the
Yeah.
red oval?
Yep.
Okay. Right. Other questions?
Your Honor, I do.
Go ahead.
So in this, I guess in the day and age of cell phone plans or with unlimited data, I certainly understand for those people that don't have those plans, this would be an advantage. And I guess what I just want to confirm is that we're trying to make sure that there is an equivalency or an equality of access in public areas where it's needed for those that might not have cell phone plans that are unlimited data is, I mean, is that kind of the bottom line of what we're trying to achieve with the program?
That, and I think the thing to think about is when you have the large events, especially at the Lau Park space, they'll be gonna be able to amp up the bandwidth. So when you have cell towers that are getting jammed up because they only have so much capacity, people that are on the Wi-Fi will have that capacity.
Okay.
If I may, Mayor, this initiative was a result of a community vision. I don't recall which one, if it was Imagine 8, that just never progressed anywhere. So when we started having renewed conversations with IMON, we talked about doing the free public Wi-Fi for that purpose, but also as amenity for visitors, especially when we have larger events. Sometimes self-coverage doesn't reach out there. My wife and I walk around there quite a bit, and sometimes we just don't get coverage. So it provides that amenity for our residents and visitors, and just another asset.
I guess I just wanted to, think about it or have a little renewed thought in terms of the necessity in this time frame versus when it was originally contemplated. There are, I will now acknowledge, there are some cell phone plans that will readily switch between reliable public Wi-Fi versus native data transmission inherent to the system. So I think this is a great amenity. I was just trying to maybe make sure that we were confident of the continued necessity.
Okay. Other questions? All right, A11, Leanne?
Marion Process Solutions has reached out to the city to request termination of their agreement with the Iowa Economic Development Authority for their high-quality jobs application from a few years back. They are still striving to grow in the jobs requirement. However, they are just not going to meet the threshold in the near term as required by their agreement. This has already been approved by the Iowa Economic Development Authority, but I wanted to share with City Council at the meeting because this will impact their tax increment finance development agreement with the city, as it was tied to that high quality jobs agreement with IEDA. They did have 2 years left in their agreement with an estimated amount of $11,000. And in the 3 years that they did receive payment, they received up to $40,000. Just wanted to point it out to City Council and see if you had questions, because this is not something that we tend to do routinely.
Okay, so again, the impact of this on the city is what?
That we would not be using TIF for those final 2 years because they're not in compliance with their agreement. And we are engaging Medco to have those discussions with Marion Process Solutions so that they do understand that.
Okay, so really not a negative impact.
Not
on
a
the
negative
city in any
impact
way.
to the city. And Marion Process Solutions is still working on growing in their jobs. It's just, their agreement was pre-COVID, much has changed.
All right, is that clear? All right, A12.
And A12, I marked for discussion because it was a chance to share some positive news. We did already share this in the In Focus, but we are asking City Council to return $2 million each to the equipment reserve, road use replacement, and sanitary sewer funds because we received $7.35 million from our Waterway 1 debris removal FEMA derecho grant. And just for the benefit of the public, I thought it would be great to share with them which projects we have outstanding and what those dollar amounts are. So I've shared those projects on the screen here. As you can see, we do have an amount remaining of 10.9 million that has been obligated that the city has not yet received. And we are starting to work on that final management cost project to get our reimbursement for our staff time and our contract with Tidal Basin. And that's it.
Good news. Any questions on that? Okay, thanks, Leanne. A13 and C1 are not marked. Questions on those? Okay, C2, Chief?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Pleasure to bring to you next steps on our action plan this afternoon. We've got two items on the agenda for this week. And just a quick look back to the fall of 22. Interim Chief Forrest Reader was here, and I was just onboarding, and we created an action plan based on critical items that were needed for the fire department as we're moving forward. Pleased to present an updated slide here that identifies that almost all of these action items are in process, two of them having been completed. Specifically, this week, we're starting to update our organizational structure. And what that is, as far as rolling that forward, is phase one, which involves the reclassification of two positions to division chief. And so this week, we're bringing for receive and file the job description for division chief within the fire department. And you'll be able to see the two positions on the current org structure, which is the battalion chief of training and safety, and the captain of fire prevention will be reclassified as division chief of training and safety and division chief of fire prevention, which will be depicted here in the red oval sectioned areas. So this is, again, a part of the reorganization as a part of our action plan moving forward. And we're excited to get going. We've got a lot of things happening in regards to the fire department with the recruit academy getting ready to start this next month and some officer vacancies and recent retirements. And so we're looking to get those positions filled. Looking forward to that. Lucas is here with me as well as a part of the reorganization. We've worked very closely with city staff, the professional services of HR, legal and finance on the implications of what this means. And so Lucas is here this evening to talk about some of those things.
Hi there. So when we talked about reclassifying these two positions, we also wanted to take information from the compensation study. And so we used the information that we received so far and implemented that within this reclassification. So we do have a budget impact increase of $20,000 or $20,891. This increase is falls under the 4% increase that we've budgeted for the non-bargaining personnel budget. So it's covered, and the first set in September will come back with the compensation study, but this is just kind of a mini step given some civil service deadlines.
Lucas, can you elaborate a little bit about the civil service deadlines and the timing of this coming to council now?
Yeah, so actually I might lean on Chief.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So with the vacancy of the previous district chief position, there is a 90-day limit on that vacancy on how long there can be an interim position being held there. And so we are up against that 90-day window. And so the timing of this reclassification is in alignment to where we can do our restructuring and reclassify that position as we're moving into the future. That vacancy is now into phase two, which is the deputy chief of operations, which will be filled as a part of the next step moving forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that part of civil service.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Chief, does this organizational change, is this also an incremental step to achieving the NFPA, is it 1709 or 1702 or whatever it was, certification that?
NFPA 1710.
Yeah, that was it.
Which is the operational standard for the deployment of firefighters. The command structure will support the deployment of our firefighters, but it has nothing to do with the staffing directly on the engines themselves, but more the management coordination, training, effective structuring and assignment of those positions.
Okay, all right. So it's not directly tied to that,
It's not.
meeting that standard. Okay.
Nor is this phase or phase two an expansion, but more of a reorganization of existing positions.
It allows, this is exactly what Forrest had identified in his assessment. And as chief and I have been working with some of our external partners, area ambulance and some of the other services that we work with and partners we work with, this structure will allow us to better define roles and responsibilities so it's clear. and keep the firefighters focused in on the things that they need to, and allows our command staff to then better train, but also work with those external partners, dive into data, incorporate different strategies to help improve our responsiveness and our efficiencies with respect to providing service to the community.
Okay. Thank you both. Next item marked for discussion is F4 on page 6. Is there any item prior to that that we need to discuss under D, E, or F? Okay, F4, Kesha.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. I want to bring this before you as a discussion item. This is a severance of property from the city. So this is the first one in my 16 years here. This is the first one that I've seen. Not typical, right? We're in the process of bringing properties in for development. So this originated back in February or March from Mr. Gormley. The property's in red. He got his assessment, much like we all did, and his taxes were going up. If you recall, the discussion in March was that there's no water, there's no sewer, there's nothing, no services to him. The county maintains his road. I mean, ultimately, he would get police response and fire response from Marion. However, after severing and returning to county jurisdiction, he still gets fire response from our fire department. So what this all entails is a little over 68 acres of property. It includes 3 owners, total of 4 properties, and about 4 acres of right-of-way, DOT and county that would return to them. They already maintain it. So there's that. One property to the north, after being approached, they realize that they have some grass area that needs prescribed burn, and in the city limits, they're not able to do that. So the property in blue is also interested, not just going along, but also interested in severing. There is stake at that, so they can accomplish their goals for their property. And the property in green is willing participant, just said, hey, team player, I'll do what you want me to. So any questions of staff? So the process next is 100%, right? For severance, you have to have 100%. This goes on to the Secretary of State. They say, yep, we agree. It gets recorded and it's done. So pretty quick process.
So staff is supportive of this?
Yes.
Okay. I always have a little bit of an issue when people say, well, you know, I'm not using city services, and they do use our roads, and they do use our parks, and they do use our pool, and they, you know, you know, if they're this close into the city, they're using city services. But if everyone's in support, I'll go along. Go ahead.
The only question I guess I have is what happens a decade from now, 2 decades from now, as the city keeps growing to the east and to the northeast? Do they just get annexed back in one day, or?
Yep. Part of the agreement that I worked with Kara to draft that they have signed is in your packet. There's a line in there that says, I agree to voluntarily annex. It gets recorded, so it's part of their,
So they
it
can't,
follows with their property.
they can't object to annexation when it comes.
Correct. They would be a voluntary participant in the future.
We can't fully secede from the union here. That's what we're
Well, it'll hold up, you know, further growth because they don't want to annex. Yeah.
Your Honor.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe just to benchmark, why did this occur in the first place? I think probably the simple way to describe it, based on what I understand, is that these parcels were annexed into the city when there was a contentious set of considerations with the solid waste agency, and this goes back to like 2005. And so, but with, as you've said, there's no immediate plans for development there. We still have that option in the future, that these would come back in. so their request made a lot of sense. And I talked with Mr. Gormley a couple of different times. And, you know, that was his recollection of the history on this too. So it was a strategic move or a tactical move at the time, but it didn't have the basis that was underpinned by development or any notion of development. So.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Kasha. Any, the next section, well, there's nothing else that's marked for discussion to the end of the agenda. Are there any items that anyone would like to discuss in particular?
Just a comment, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
This would be toward the end of the agenda on page 9, F3, Dave, concerning the Sycamore Heights revised preliminary plat. You and I had an email exchange. I was inquisitive about coming to understand none of those building plans had any basements, which you clarified for me. I think that was the principal question. And also just, I think you reminded me that the garages do open up on alleyways, correct?
Yes, but this is item F3
Yes.
under consent. This one you pointed out is the revised preliminary plat for the single family homes on the east side of
I'm sorry.
44th.
Yeah,
So if we go back to F3,
yeah.
this would be the one, and you're correct, no basements. Make sure I get this right. F3 under consent, no basements, it's all unexcavated space. I talked to Gary Hansen, they're not required to have storm shelters as you had indicated. They're stick built, so it's, you know, get to your lowest point of your house or your most sheltered room in the house to accommodate that. The manufactured home communities in Marion are required to have that storm shelter in place.
Okay.
And yeah, and yes, the garage doors are gonna face the alley. That was always the intent.
Yeah.
In this development on the west side of 44th.
Well, I think just maybe the upshot of that was thanks for your quick response earlier today when I just was inquisitive about those items.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, that brings us to the last item, which is a discussion regarding August 17th agenda. Is that correct? No? Oh, I'm sorry. I guess we're done. We're adjourned.
Oh, let's have a redo.
Let's get ice cream.
What's that?
You're gonna give us ice cream?
Ice cream. I just had some.
Okay.
Sign up for the mayor for a day and then you can do it. You have to buy the auction item.